All right, so we'll be having 3 activities today. All of them have to do with like algorithms or patterns that you're going to be seeing in the midterm. So the first one will have to do with wait, was my mic not working just now? Okay, so anyways, the first one has to do with nested for loops. The second one has to do with areas, and the third one have to do with um, counting even areas. So um, there's a lot of things catered towards 2D arrays, but you'll also notice that it's quite similar to how a single array works. It's just that there's that extra added dimension. So it shouldn't be too hard. So for our first activity, we have this thing called drawing a quilt. So I call it drawing a quilt because it kind of looks like one. It kind of looks like a blanket because you can see that there's like a grid pattern right here, and the goal is to have each tile filled with a circle, and it's alternating colors between red and blue. Note that in the prompt, I say it will not be a fixed size. Each time you execute the main method, the size of the circles will be different. So that means like the first time you run it, maybe the circles are of size 50 radius or size 20 diameter, or you know, like so basically we want it at a certain interval, which is 50 to 150 exclusive. So that means the diameter of the circles are going to be either 50 or 150, or somewhere in between, actually. Yeah. So so because it's exclusive, that means it's actually 50 to 149. So we have to keep that in mind when we go about it. Anyways, I should actually give you guys the sharing link right now for this slide, because right over here I have some starting code. I wrote it manually, so there might be an error, but I don't think there should be one, but we'll fix it along the way if there is.
All right, so the first thing first, for this one, you want to alternate the size, but you want to do it only one time. So you first, again, have to generate a random number first. So
Okay.
you will create a random object.
Is that all that I need?
And then you have a random object, and then you will generate a random number between 50 to 150 exclusive. So yes, number, or yeah. So you do ran dot next in, and generally I have a formula for this, so it always works if it's exclusive. So what you want to do is you take max R minus min R,
parenthesis,
and then you add min R. So what's happening is in the parentheses max underscore R minus min underscore R, that part is giving you the range. So if you take 150, you minus 50, you get a range of 100. And you want your first number to be 50, so you add the min, which is 50. So that will move up to 50 to 150 exclusive.
So are you saying if our professor gave us like a maximum and a minimum, then it doesn't matter what numbers they are, as long as we follow this formula right here, will it always work?
Yes, it will always work for exclusive.
Okay. Well, What if it was inclusive? What's the one thing that we change if it was inclusive?
If it's inclusive, you might want to add an extra one so that you have more number in the range.
So then it would just be like +1 at the end right here, like next to min r.
I would add it in the range.
Okay.
Because in here you want 51, let's say 50 to 150 inclusive, then you want at least, you want 101 numbers. And so the range will increase by 1. So that 1 plus 1 will be in the range and the shift will stay the same.
So in other words, I would put it inside the parentheses next to min r over here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so min r +1. So that's what it would look like if it was inclusive with the random. Okay, so that works. We'll always get the random number that we want, and we only need to get it once because we don't want it different for every circle. We want every single circle to have this random size, and then use it. Actually, probably a better name for this would just be size, right? Because that's the size of the circle. Okay, so in that case, the next part would be to draw the rectangles. So this one's a little bit tricky. I mean, we can also worry about picking a color and actually like drawing them into the console, but let's worry about like actually like setting up the parameters for them first. So how many loops do you think this is going to take, Yan?
So we already have a constant number for that. So for this one, you want at least 5 rows and 10 columns. So that would take 2 nested loops. It can be for loop, it can be a while loop since we know the range.
Okay, so basically, are you saying like is it going to be like a 2D array a little bit, kind of? Not exactly like it, but you can notice that there's a grid right here, and so you have rows. I mean, you have columns going. Well, okay, sorry. You have rows that go left and right, and then you have columns that go up and down. So we'll treat one for loop for rows and put that inside of another bigger for loop that treats the columns. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's see. So let's say like, okay, I'm a student and I know how to start off a for loop for the outside one, and like it's probably usually I. But then what should I set it less than? Because I'm not sure what the outer for loop should be if I have rows or columns. Should it be the rows or should it be the columns?
You can, so in this case, you can start either rows or columns. They will be fine. But I would genuinely start with rows first just because I want to finish everything in the first row. Then I move on to the next one. And you notice that so this is nested for loop. If the outer one is meaning for rows, then you start at row 1. And then for every row, you see a column, right? And so the purpose of the second loop would be to loop through every element within that row. So every column within that row. So let's just say for loop, and let's use, instead of making 0, let's use I equal 1. So you can go for row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, 5.
So you said, wait, something about 1? What?
So start I with 1 instead of 0.
Okay.
All right. and you have 5 rows and you want 5 to be counted. So you do I less than or equal to rows. All right, and increment the I. So you have your rows set up. So let's set up the columns. So you notice here we have 10 columns. All right, so let's go for nj equal 1.
Well, before we do that, is there anything wrong if a student did I equals 0 and then said less than rows? Would that work as well?
That would also work as well, as long as there are 5 iterations.
So for now, we're just going to go with this. So for now, we're going to go with this because I want the students to understand that this works as well. So let's go with this pattern for now. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so then now we're going to go with columns. So should I be naming the integer here the same thing as the outer for loop, or should it be something else?
You should name it something else, just because they are together in a way. So if you name the same thing, it doesn't know which I you're referring to or J, then it will give you a compile error. So name it differently because they are using for different things. One is for rows and one is for columns.
All right. So in this case, we have rows over here and columns over here. So how do you stop students from getting confused between switching the two? How do you usually remember which one to use?
Can you say more about it?
So the problem is like when I'm dealing with like nested for loops that have to deal with grids like 2D arrays or something, right? It can get really confusing if which loop is going up or down and which loop is going left and right. So in general, how do I know which loop is for which direction?
All right. That can depend. With 2D array, you can tell the difference between rows and column is by looking at the way you initialize the length. So if it's like array.length, can you type somewhere?
What was that again?
So let's say your 2D array names array. Just
So
type
make a
somewhere.
2D array is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
All right, can you do in rows?
Do you mean like int rows or like?
Yes, in
Okay.
rows. Array 2D.length. And then in columns, array 2D bracket 0.length. All right, So with 2D, you can tell which one's the different based on the way you initialize it. But I would also start with the outer loop rows first, and then the second loop column, just because the way that 2D array is working is the first bracket is for rows, the second bracket is for column. So if you have outer loop be rows and inner loop be columns, it would just be easy on your end to tell the difference. And for this question right here, you can technically go for columns first or rows first. It doesn't really matter because we're not dealing with 2D arrays, but you do have to remember which variable I or j is your outer loop and which one is inner loop. And the way we had the constants be rows equal 5 and constant columns equal 10, it makes it easier to know which value I or which value j is referred to what. So that is also why it's very helpful using constant variables, constant numbers, if they're already given to you, so you know which one's for which. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yeah. So in other words, the inner for loop goes sideways, and then the outer for loop goes up and down. So that should pretty much simplify the process. And this should actually work for the other activities too. So just keep that in mind as we go. All right. So now the next step is, okay, we have this for loop, and so now we're going to draw that amount of circles. So but we have to decide the coordinates. So why don't I make a circle first? So that would be an ellipse, and it's assumed that I should get the ellipse graphics package. So actually, let me go ahead and grab that real quick. So it should actually, it should be in Canvas, but I'm not sure if it's a good idea to just bring it up. Why don't I stop sharing my screen real quick so that nothing like weird shows up? And
it should be on Canvas.
Yeah.
The syllabus page, I believe.
Okay, actually, let me just go ahead and bring it up. I don't think anything weird will show up, so.
So this is a question for the chat. So you notice that at 0, 0, your circle is red. At 0, 1, your circle is blue. 0, 2, your circle is red. So do you see the pattern? So do you see the pattern? What should be in the if statements so that when I get to that number or grid, I know what color of my circle will be. So think about it.
All right, so I finished importing the graphics package. So now I should be able to use ellipses. So why don't I go ahead and start making an ellipse and figure out what the coordinates should be. So I know for sure that the size is going to be the radius right here times 2, I think. Oh.
Yes.
So wait, did we say that was the radius or?
The circle should be a diameter. So the width and the height should be diameter. So you times 2.
Okay. Well, actually, if the diameter is the size, right? Then technically we don't need to multiply by 2, right?
So if size for radius, then we times 2. But if you mean for diameter, then just leave it at that. It doesn't.
So I think we just didn't make the question clear. So let's just assume the size is the radius.
Okay.
Okay. So then that means we'd have to multiply it by 2.
And to make it easy, let's start the x and the y at 0, 0.
So this is going to draw the amount of circles that we want, but they're all going to be at 0, 0. So that means it's just going to draw all 50 circles in this single spot right here at the top left. So what's something that we know for sure, like perhaps a variable inside this for, like a couple of variables even inside this for loop that we can use to shift the circle by the size of the circle, left and right, up and down. What are some things we can use?
So that's right. That's a good point. So if you have it as like 0, 0 like this, and in the loop, in the loop, then it would draw this many circle 10 times 5. You get 50. So it will give you like 50 circles at 0, 0. So you want to initialize your x and your y somewhere, not inside the inner loop, but something outside so that you can keep updating them as they go. So you remember where the circle should move and where it left off last time. So I would initialize the x and the y outside the outer loop and make it 0, 0 in the beginning.
Well, it's true that we can get the x and y outside the loop, but we can actually find it inside here too. Or did you just want it for readability?
I just want to do for readability.
Okay.
And make it 0, 0. All right. I have question mark. Why do you have x equal question mark before the circle?
So, so this is what my approach is actually. So when I take a look at this, I have to find the x before I make the circle, right? So I know what point the circle should be at. And I know for the beginning it's at 0. Then I know for the next part it's size, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the next x is going to be at size times 2. Then the next x is going to be at size times 3, because it always shifts by the size of the circle. So with that said, I mean, technically, all I need to do is get the size of it and multiply it by I, right? Because each iteration represents the number inside the for loop, right?
Okay. Yeah, that is the same thing that we would approach, and it's like it's really not straightforward, though it is true. So yes, but technically you forget times 2 because we want to move the diameter, not the radius.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we can show the your way first, and then, or do you want to like show the symbol way first, and then we show your way so that.
Well, I'm not sure what your way was, but I want to try it this way first, and then you can show your way. So 2 ways to do the same thing.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay. So so actually, for my way, I'm just gonna go through it real quick, so then we save a little bit more time. So this is what it's gonna look like. So actually, I don't exactly need X and Y yet for readability. I just want to save some time here and just put it all in one place. So notice that we start at 0. So if I multiply 0 by size times 2, then it's going to start at 0. And it's the same thing can be said for going downwards by the columns, so J, right? So if I multiply them together like this, give me one. So if I do it like that, then it'll always shift by the entire diameter of the circle according to like the I and J. Because at I equals 0 and J equals 0, we're going to start over here. And then at I equals 1 and J equals 0, we're going to move to the right by an entire circle. So it pretty much should work if we do it this way. So that's all we need for setting up the coordinates for the circles. So the next step would then be, well, like we normally test it right here, right? But we can't test it until we're done. So it's a little bit harder. So we're gonna finish it here first and get the color and draw the circles, and then we'll see what Yen does her way. So okay, so so for picking a color, I'm going to refer back to one of the lectures that professor has given us. So if you look here, and actually I'll give you guys the, oh, I mean, you don't really need the link because there's no like code to copy and paste here. So so recall at this one array, not array, but like drawing that she's trying to make where you have zeros and ones alternating. How do you tell if it's a 0 or a 1? This is kind of similar to our problem where we're trying to draw circles if it's red or blue. So in a way, it's like red means 0, blue means 1. So I can make that similar distinction with the pattern. So the hint here is to check whether row plus column is even. So let's go ahead and do that. So how would I check row and column is even? Does that mean rows and columns, Yen, or would that be I and J?
So I would check I and J because right, I and J now is the iterations for rows and columns, and we want to check at every circle at which column and at which row. And is I and J. And I would do the parentheses between I and plus J just because mod have higher precedent than addition. So if you don't do the parenthesis between I and J, I plus J, it will give you the wrong answer, but it should be right. So be careful that mod has a higher precedent than than addition. So just have the parentheses there so that the compiler knows that you want the addition to go first.
Okay, so now we notice that the first circle should always be red. So which one of these should be setting my color to red, Yen?
So if it's even, you want your circle to be red. So that would goes with the first loop, I mean the first if. So you want to set color to be red, right? And then now that you have your color set, you want your circle to know that it wants to be red or blue. So you do circle.
So now basically just by following the pattern, if it's at this spot right here, like every other spot, then make it red. Otherwise, make it blue. So does this work yet?
Yes, it should work.
Okay. So all that's left is to actually draw the circle. So does that mean we should be calling circle.draw, or should I be using something else?
So right now you're reassigning the color to the color object. So you want to call your circle and set the color to be my color first before you draw. So I would do circle, set color, and then my color. And for this one, remember that draw is just fill the circle. Outline the circle. But fill is what we want in this case because we want the whole circle to be a solid color. So right here, just use fill.
All right. So with that, does that pretty much do everything? Is it ready for testing now?
I believe it's ready for testing. So what is going on?
So when we take a look at this, for some reason it doesn't even have a circle. I'm actually not quite sure what's happening here.
All right. So can you look back at the code? Let's see what's going on. Can you make it bigger? So in the chat, what do you think we went wrong? Where do you think we went wrong?
Actually, this is strange because I do remember watching the video from last semester doing this same thing, and it was like this. That's very weird.
Can you do a debugger run real quick?
Okay, sure. Where do you want the break line to be?
I think we should first compile it and set it breakpoint at line 22.
Wait, I think I know what might have happened. Never mind. Okay, so let's go ahead and set it at line 22.
So for a chat, it says that one person said that it works, but there are more rows and columns. So maybe it's your BlueJ. You might want to restart it and open up again.
Sure. Yeah. Not sure why that's happening. So let's go ahead and retry this.
That is weird. Can you send me your code really quick? I'll run on my part.
Do you want to try it on your screen, Yan? Perhaps it might work better on your laptop. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's doing that, and especially if it's working on somebody else's laptop. I should have tested this beforehand, so sorry about that, guys. Let me just try one thing, just to be sure.
I think that it might be the size. It might be too big. So instead of make it size for radius, you might want to change that to diameter. So renaming the size to diameter.
So turn it into diameter.
Yes. So it is the size. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I knew something like was really off when we were doing that. Okay. So
So, but there's also one more catch is that we have 10 rows and 5 columns. So what's going on? We increment it right too.
so actually, what's happening here is that I actually just mixed up the I and the J.
What you did?
Yeah. So actually, the J has to do with going
Right.
sideways, and the I has to do with going up and down. And with that, it was painfully solved. Our problem was finally painfully solved. So for this next activity, it's a little bit easier. We're supposed to work with a 2D array of rectangles and find the average area. So I gave us some starter code again. So you're probably going to want to go back to the Google presentation, and over here at slide 6, that's the code that we want. So we're going to go ahead and use this. Notice also that I called the class average area, so go ahead and name it that. So just to explain a little bit about what's going on here, I just have the main method drawing a bunch of rectangles. Like the first one's just going to be size 0, and it's just going to keep increasing in size over and over. So it's going to do 5 rows of, 10 rows of rectangles with size 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, and 5, 5. So it's just going to have all 5 of those rectangles 10 times in a row. And with that, I did the math ahead of time, and it should be 6, if I remember correctly. It should be 6. So last time I messed up on the math, so I hope it doesn't show up like that again. But our job right here is to work on this find average area static method that I made for us. You don't have to worry about static methods, like making them, but I just put it here for the sake of simplicity for this session. So we could just like get into it without making a class. So we're just going to work with this method. But it pretty much works very, very similar to how a classes method does, where you just have an input right here, like a parameter, and then you just work with that. And then you return a double, because we say double right here.
So for this one, at first, I would notice what is the method is asking for first. And since this one is an assessor, I would initialize the sum. So the total sum to be 0. All right. So now that I have the storage for the sum, I would loop through the 2D array. All right. So now that you have the 2D array initialized, you want to add the area of each rectangle inside the sum. So that means you have to utilize the get width and the get height of the rectangle class. So I would do sum equals sum. Or the shortcut plus equal sum. Then I would get the object out first. So that would be array 2D ij get width times get height times 2D array 2D get height. So for any of you who doesn't know the shortcut that Mark is using here, the plus and equal sign right here after the word sum, that would just equal, it's just like shortcut so that you don't have to say add sum at the end. So basically it's sum equal sum plus array 2D ij dot get width times array 2D ij dot get height. But to save time, Mark did plus and equal. All right, so now that you had a sum, but it's asking for the average area. So you do need a count. So let's do a count as well.
All right, so then all we have to do is the count. So where would I initialize it?
I would initialize in the beginning as well. It doesn't matter, but you can just do it there for simplicity. So count in the beginning would be 0, all right? And since it's a 2D array, it is also a good thing to notice that your 2D array can never be like an empty one. It always has something inside. But you can also keep a count inside the nested loop. So you do count plus plus. Now that you have your count and your sum, the next part would just be division.
So would the division happen after the loops or in them or before them?
So the average, you're asking for only one number. So you should only do it one time. So that would be outside of your nested loops. So it would just be sum divided by count. So Mark, for this 2D array, do I need an if statement to check the count? If it's equal 0 or not?
Well, to be very precise, when you're given a 2D array, the usual assumption is that it's not going to be empty, but you can still kind of check, but it's really weird for the structure of a 2D array. Like, what does that even mean for a 2D array to be empty? Like, why are you even making a 2D? Like, it's just really weird too. So, in the test, if she gives you a 2D array, she should mention that if it's empty, then you do it. But if she doesn't say it, then you don't have to worry about that at all. She will always remind you in the test, like, oh yeah, this has to account if it's empty. So don't worry about it too much. But for 2D arrays, unless she says so, like, and I imagine she's not going to, that you don't have to worry about empty 2D arrays. For arrays and array lists, she usually makes you have to worry about empty sets and whatnot. But for 2D arrays, it's different. So that's how it usually is.